Now it's time for another Board Game Brawl preview with Nick Meanahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey people, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Dragon Brew, and it's from August Games. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page. You can follow the link up in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Those links will take you right to the page. You can find out more information than I could possibly tell you here, and hopefully you'll consider backing the project. Now, Dragon Brew is a Euro game with a very interesting theme, which is not something you always get with a Euro game. In this case, it takes place after long periods of war and strife on a sort of fantasy Lord of the Rings type world, and instead of solving their conflicts with violence, now people have brewing competitions, beer brewing to be more specific. So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get together the ingredients you need in order to brew the best beers possible. You got to get the right kind of barrel as well, and you got to put it all together in order to appeal to judges who have very specific tastes. Of course, you can upgrade your brewery along the way, have some other shenanigans happen with event cards, things like that. So let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype version of the game. Keep that in mind. What you see here in this version may be different than what you see in the final version, just a little bit different. And then we're going to come back, I'll give you my final thoughts. Dragon Brew is a competitive game for 2 to 4 players. Each player is a head brewer from a particular fantasy race, attempting to build up your brewery and enter your products into beer competitions, all of which is a way to earn points. The game is played over 3 game years, each one broken down into the 3 phases of spring, fall, and winter. At the end of the 3rd year, whoever has the most points is the winner. A scoreboard is placed out on the table with a disc to keep track of the years, and each player gets a scoring marker, each of which are placed on top of each other to signify turn order. Every player gets a race, which consists of 8 different estate cards you'll lay out in your play area. Some races have upgrade cards that will immediately attach to their requisite cards. You also get a player screen, behind which you'll hide your recipes, gold, and ingredients, and you'll also get a set of brewer meeples to match the color of your scoring token. Your main race card will tell you how many brewers you start with on your race card, as well as how many grain ingredients and gold you start with, and how many barrel and spice recipe cards you'll get. Grain cubes are yellow, red, and blue, and they represent wheat, barley, and rye. There are many other wooden tokens representing different ingredients, like wort, toadstool, dragon scale, and mana. 5 different rows of cards are randomly made. 5 barrel and spice cards are laid out from their shuffled decks to make the recipe rows. Similarly, 5 brewery and event cards are laid out in rows to make a drafting pool. Finally, a number of judge cards equal to 1 plus the number of players is laid out on the scoreboard. As mentioned before, each year is broken down into 3 season phases. At the start of each of these phases, determine who has the lowest victory points, and they will go first, followed by everyone else in clockwise order. On your turn in the spring phase, you may draft either an event or brewery card, and then you must take a brewer action. Every player keeps taking turns in this phase until everyone's brewer meeples are assigned. When drafting, you take an event or brewery card, pay the cost at the bottom of the card, and then immediately replace it. You can pay 1 gold to discard any 5 cards from the 2 rows and replace them before you draft. Event cards give you an effect and then are immediately discarded. For example, quest cards let you spend brewers or gold to gain points, gold, or beer, whereas migrant gnomes can be hired for the current year, giving you a temporary purple brewer meeple. Brewery cards get added to your estate immediately. There are 4 different types. Action cards let you assign a brewer to get a specific action, and it is mandatory to do one of these actions on your turn if you have any brewers left. Upgrades will attach to an existing brewery card and improve it. Free brewery cards give you an action you can always use as many times as you want. Spell cards require you using specific ingredients to activate their abilities. Regarding the mandatory actions, these will do things like convert and store ingredients, draw cards, etc. Some action cards are unusable for the rest of the year once a brewer is assigned, while others can be used multiple times. When everyone's done with the spring phase, you move on to fall. The first thing everyone does simultaneously is brew beers. You can brew up to 3 beers plus 1 for each extra meeple on your brewery action card. To do this, you'll need 1 barrel card and 1 or more spice cards, which you'll line up behind your screen until everyone's ready. However, you still also need all the ingredients depicted on those cards, which correspond to the multicolored tokens I mentioned earlier. Once everyone's finished their beers, everyone lifts their screens and reveals them simultaneously for presenting them to the judges. But first, all players confirm each other's ingredients. Any improperly made beers are discarded away. After that, the beers that were fully formed are submitted to the judges for judging, appropriately enough. Every judge on the panel has primary and secondary characteristic preferences. Basically, they will give the points depicted on their card to the beer that has either the most, upwards arrow, or least, downwards arrow, of the characteristic depicted, either color, strength, or bitterness, or yellow, red, and brown, respectively. Look at the barrels and spice used in your beers and add up the numbers for the characteristics. Go one by one through the judges and award their points to the player who has the most or least of that primary characteristic they're looking for. If two or more players are tied with beers that meet the primary characteristic, the tiebreaker is the judge's secondary characteristic. Check to see which of the tied beers has the most or the least for that one. If it's still a tie, the players split the points. Whoever won each judge's points gets a blue ribbon token, which is for breaking ties at the end of the game. Put the token on the brewed beer itself until the end of the current year, because that beer cannot win another judge award for this year. Finally, collect the profits from all the brewed beers. Even if you didn't successfully woo the judges with your beers, it may still give you gold and points, as indicated on the bottom of the barrel and spice cards, as long as you actually finished these brews. The final phase of the year is winter. Advance the year marker, unless it was already the last year, in which case you just directly skip to the end of the game. Otherwise, you should also reset your brewers by taking them off of your action cards, return any game ingredients that aren't in your winter stores cards to the supply, clear out the existing judges and replace them with new ones, take back the recipe cards you used for brewing, and reset both the drafting pool and the recipe pool. At the end of the third year, whoever has the most points is the winner. If there's a tie, whoever has the most ribbons is the winner. If there's still a tie, gold is the tiebreaker. If there's still a tie, the victory is shared. Well, as I mentioned in my intro, one of the most interesting things about Dragon Brew is the theme, because while there are a ton of Euro games out there, a lot of them start to look like carbon copies of each other. They might have fine mechanisms, but you're treading the same thematic ground over and over again. There really aren't a lot of brewing games out there. There have been more, but not, especially none that I can think of that have a fantasy theme to it. And it's not just that it has a theme and boom, slap it on some mechanisms and put it out. It actually makes sense in the context of the game, because you're trying to improve your brewery, you're upgrading the different parts that you already have of the brewery, you're having to take advantage of the brewers that you have, but then perhaps getting gnomes to help you out as temporary brewers. There's other different events that you can take part of as well. And so, and adding that together with the fact that you have to actually mix together your beers, and you can have multiple beers and submit them to the judges, it just all adds more thematic weight to the game than you would expect for this style of game. And of course, because the game is mechanically sound from the get-go, that's going to help people a lot when you have a good theme together with solid mechanisms. There's the turns go very quickly in the game. You're only playing for 3 years, but even though the game can play quickly, it still feels as if there's a lot of meat there for players, especially those who really love strategy games, to sink their teeth into, especially since there's a large variety of cards in all of the different decks, a large variety of races to choose from, each with their own different allotment of estate cards and different specialties, loadouts of resources that you start off with, things like that. So it's not a game where you're going to play it once and be like, oh, well, okay, that's it. I mean, I've seen everything this game has to offer. No, I mean, even without any kind of expansion, you just have tons of different variable setups and how things are going to run and what you're going to be aiming for. I didn't even talk about some of the other variable ways you can play the game, like corrupt judges that you could even bribe. So there's just a lot to unpack, even just in this base game, let alone whatever could come out in the future or through the Kickstarter campaign. And I think so when you mix that together, replayability, fantasy theme, really interesting fantasy theme with brewing beer, which you don't see a lot of, and solid Euro game mechanisms, it's going to be a game that appeals to a pretty wide swath of people. It won't just be Euro gamers, it'll be people who are willing to give a Euro game a chance that they normally wouldn't because of that theme. If you fall into any of those categories of people, Don't take my word for it. Go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more information about Dragon Brew. The link will be in the top corner of your screen as well as down in the description section underneath the video. Go there and consider backing the project. That is Dragon Brew from August Games. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting our sponsors. Take care. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.